Good morning. I'm Secretary of State Trey Hargett. Today is Wednesday, February 24th, 2016. We are recording this teleconference, which will be posted to our website, sos.tn.gov. Today we'll be discussing the fourth quarter of 2015 outlined in the Tennessee Quarterly Business and Economic Indicators Report. The report is published through a partnership of my office and the University of Tennessee Knoxville's Center for Business and Economic Research. Joining me today is Dr. William F. Fox, who serves as the Center's director. The report offers a snapshot of the state's economy based on business data from the Division of Business Services. Let me begin by saying data this quarter indicates, number one, Tennessee's economy continues to grow, now in its 17th consecutive quarter. Business Services processed more than 7,700 new entity filings in the fourth quarter of 2015. That's up 7.2%, and is part of more than 30,000 new entity filings recorded the entire year. And the last point I'll make is dissolutions fell nearly 15% compared to the same time in 2014. We'll take questions shortly, but for now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Fox.
Thank you very much. Let me reiterate what Secretary Hargett just said, and that is that the fourth quarter of 2015 showed continued very healthy growth in Tennessee. We certainly see it in the initial filings for new businesses in Tennessee. 7% growth rate is very strong. And indeed, if you have access to the report, you might look at figure 3, where you can see in that report this very consistent growth since 2011 in the number of initial filings. Very, very strong signal of Tennessee growth. We also see it in other data. We see it in the employment data in December, where we had 2.3% year-over-year growth in employment. Anything over 1% is good. And when you're at 2.3, that just reiterates the strength of our economy. Add to that tax revenue growth, where we had 9.8% growth in the fourth quarter, and by all the indicators that we look at, the fourth quarter was very good. And so we remain optimistic. These data pointing as a leading indicator to continued economic growth in 2016. It's also worth pointing out that the 4 biggest counties in Tennessee, and while we didn't include it in this report, also Rutherford, the 5th biggest county, accounted for, on net, all of the new initial filings growth in a year-over-year basis. The core counties in the state of Tennessee have reinvigorated in a variety of different ways. Population, for example, which had shown very little growth for several decades in these 4 core counties, has grown at about a 0.9% annual rate since 2010, and that's a pretty healthy rate. And so what we're seeing is some reurbanization, both in the population data and as supported by the initial filings. So in summary, what the fourth quarter data show to us is a strong Tennessee economy with leading indicators into the first half of the year, signaling excellent growth. And let me just mention one other piece of data, which maybe has not gotten as much attention as it should have, and that is that the weeks compensated of unemployment insurance are at the lowest level in 4 decades, showing again how strong the labor sector is in Tennessee right now. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Hello. Yes, this is Ed with the Memphis Business Journal.
Hi, Ed.
I had one quick question. For the past year, and I think it's highlighted in this report, the state has had a very good, slow but steady increase overall in its economy, and our broad indicators have generally been solid all the way across. But I still get the sense, based upon local business surveys, MTSU survey, business conditions, that a lot of business owners still feel very, very negative about the overall economy in the state, even though the indicators are the opposite. Do you have any sense of why there seems to be some disconnect between some in the business community and the actual improvements in the numbers?
Sure. And I'll answer your question. Let me just point out that Shelby County has had very good growth in initial filings during the fourth quarter. It's been one of the the core counties that has done very well. So I'm sure you picked up on that. Now, as to this disconnect, I think the thing that's true about the economy right now is there's this big number of winners and big number of losers in a relative sense. So let me give you some examples of what I have in mind. If you're taking any kind of a long-term view of employment, for example, you see excellent employment growth in professional and business services, in education, private education, and healthcare kinds of things, in leisure and hospitality. Those sectors showing excellent growth, even if we compare them, let's say, with the pre-Great Recession data. On the other hand, if you're looking at construction or most kinds of manufacturing, particularly non-durable manufacturing, employment is well below what it was, 7 or 8 years ago, even though we've come back a little bit. And so, what you have is such a wide set of differences across sectors as to how the economy is performing. And then now go to the retail level, and if you're doing e-commerce, you're probably seeing really good growth. If you're doing bricks and mortar stores, the data nationally last year, for example, showed just over 1% growth in bricks and mortar stores, roughly the inflation rate, by comparison with well into double digits for e-commerce. And so again, it depends where you are in the economy as to how good you feel about things. But when you put it all together, it still says very solid economic growth.
Excellent. Thanks, Dr. Fox.
Does anyone else have any other questions for Secretary Hargett or Dr. Fox?
This is Dave Fluster in Chattanooga. I wondered if you could speak to why all of the business growth in new filings, did you say came from the top 5 counties? Is that, do people file differently from where they're actually, the county in which they're domiciled? I mean, or what phenomena? You're saying that the other 91 or 90 counties had no net growth in new filings in the fourth quarter?
Well, that is true, Dave. What you said. Now, there still are 3,500 or so initial filings in these other counties, and so let's recognize that a lot of activity was taking place out there. It just struck me that this particular quarter, so much of the activity is in the urban parts of Tennessee, which, by the way, I find that a really encouraging signal. So if you take a long-term look at Tennessee's population growth, its employment growth, you would see that it's been very much a suburban phenomenon. It's been the Williamson counties, the Blount counties, the Rutherford counties, where we have seen the fastest growth in population and employment. And while those places continue to do well, what we have seen now is again, at least in the population data and this quarter's initial filings data, excellent growth in the urban areas as well. And I know I haven't been to Chattanooga since last summer, downtown at least, but in the heart of other cities I've been in, Nashville and Knoxville, for example, there is a lot going on downtown. It's visible to the naked eye, and you can see it in the data. It was really the reason that I emphasized that point. And in Shelby County, which Memphis economy has been a little slower coming back from the Great Recession, but having such strong growth in initial filings in the fourth quarter in Shelby County, I thought was just really, really good signal.
Thanks.
Does anyone have any other questions for Secretary Hargett or Dr. Fox?
This is Dave Fluster. I'll ask just one more. That obviously the markets, equity markets, have shown some downturn so far this year. You don't see it as any kind of leading indicator that people are still very positive in Tennessee, despite sort of some concerns in equity markets.
Well, as was asked before, there is this, that Ed asked, there is this bit of a disconnect, I think, between the real economic data and some people's perceptions of the economy. And we did get a pretty strong fall off at the end of 2015 and beginning of 2016 in the equity markets. Came back over the last week. I haven't looked at today's, but I think it was in the pre-market was an expectation downward. A lot of that is focused more on what's happening, I think, outside the U.S. rather than inside the U.S. The really big difference about the U.S. from the rest of the world is that our economic growth is domestically driven. We're not really that reliant on China or the EU. Now, it matters a little bit. If you're an exporter, it matters a lot. But in aggregate, we're still very domestically driven. And so I think the market over-anticipated a slowdown in the economy, which and the market seemed to be correcting a little bit last week, particularly, and recognizing that it had, it was pricing equities too low, given what is likely to be a 2016 that, when put together, looks a lot like 2014 and 15 in terms of economic growth. Not extraordinary growth, but solid 2% plus real GDP growth and good employment growth again.
Does anyone else have questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Matt Markgraf, WKMS in far western Kentucky. We also cover the northwesternmost part of Tennessee, and I was wondering if you have a more specific breakdown available on maybe a county or region level of some of these indicators and filing data.
Unfortunately, we don't do a county level analysis of it, Matt. I'm sorry that we don't. We do look at these bigger counties, but not for all 95 counties in Tennessee. So we don't have anything specifically on northwest Tennessee. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you.
And I want to point out as well, for your stories, either online or in print, there are headshots available of Secretary Hargett and Dr. Fox available in the email that you got this morning. So does anybody else have any final questions? Okay.
Thank you for participating. We appreciate your coverage of these important indicators and look forward to your future participation as well.